Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being a part of Safe Space. Thank you for joining on. I'll be introducing my guests very shortly. These are maiden editions, so there will be more editions coming up down the road. So I'll encourage you to stay tuned to this channel. I want to welcome you again and to let you know that presently we may not be on Facebook Live because of some network issues. At the end of the program, we'll upload it and you'll be able to see the video offline on Facebook. However, we are currently on YouTube, so if you're on YouTube right now, you should be seeing us and hearing us live and direct. I would like you to perhaps go to your Facebook page, discuss issues we'll be bringing up. I believe that it will be beneficial to you. It's going to be an amazing experience, and I would like you to always be a part of this, and at the end of this also tell your friends to be a part. Also here you can get answers to tough questions, life issues and all of that. And by the way, to also let you know that you can send in your questions to us as we begin. I'll tell you a little more about that. Let me not keep our guests waiting. Let me introduce him. With me today is a medical practitioner, a very astute man, gentleman. I call him a very bright-minded young man, and just quite abreast of on just different topics. And I really, somebody I like to engage in conversations with. It's the kind of doctor you like to have as your personal doctor. Presently, and that's where it's coming from, he's been like a public health analyst on one of the popular TV stations. He's been doing that weekly since this COVID pandemic started. And I'm happy to have him here today. He's none other.
I know that a lot of people are going through a lot during this time, but I think it's just about us having the staying power, and then that's what we're here to do, actually, to give you that space where you can, talk to us and we can talk to you back, and then, just keep you going.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I'll be your host. My name is Wale Afelumo. I'm a certified marriage coach, a leadership enthusiast, and I just like to be a coach to help people. And of course, I'm a pastor. I like to always say that. Now, like Dr. rightly said, we'll be talking about building mental stamina in crisis. And I tell you, it's one topic that I think everybody needs. It's a topic that I think everybody needs. Now, I'd like to hear your questions. I'd like to hear your contributions, your comments. And you can reach us by making comments on the YouTube channel. You can also send us WhatsApp messages on these two numbers, 090 80 million, that is 80 000 000, or 090 82 then 222 222. So 8 and 2 all the way till you have your 11 digits. So we'll be welcoming your questions. So I was saying that this topic will help just anybody at all, business people, students, parents. Just if you're living life, you need this topic to be able to build a mental stamina. Doctor, I did a survey in our church about 3 weeks ago, and just looking at some of the responses to particular questions, you realize that a lot of people are dealing with, they are fighting mental battles.
Yes.
People are saying, Pastor, we need encouragement. We feel low-spirited. Encourage us. We need our spirit lifted. In fact, one of our staff in our staff devotion said that they've had to fight a lot of mind battles this season. And I think that is why what we are talking about today is really very important. Yeah. Many of us admire, athletes. I particularly like wrestlers, and sometimes we admire their physical builds, but then when you watch some wrestling matches or a race, I think something in the mind has taken over and pushing these people. For the marathon runner, it's beyond his legs, it's beyond his heartbeat, and that's why we have some of these dumbbells here.
I was actually impressed to see it on set. So,
so people do physical exercise for their muscles, but it appears that there's an exercise some of these people do for their minds. Now we are in a pandemic, in this COVID thing. we are dealing with a new adversary. We are fighting a new kind of wrestling.
Different kind of enemy.
We are running a different kind of marathon race because we don't even know for how long this will be here. And I know that we're in a crisis now.
Yeah,
we're in a crisis time. And people need stamina.
Yeah.
Where I want to begin with you today, Doctor, is can you describe the enemy, the adversary we are contending with right now, in few words for our guests?
I'm sure it's not known. It's not strange to a lot of people. Virtually the whole world has been plunged into different kind of climb with the coronavirus, COVID-19, that is, ravaging the world, and every department in society has been affected by this. It's been termed by the WHO as a pandemic, as at way back in March, and we can see the numbers of cases that we're dealing with. We can see health systems in countries which we would applaud to be very advanced, also being taken a shake by this. We can see the numbers of lives that have been lost. Just a couple of days you were telling me a lot of people who have just passed, not even from COVID, but imagine the numbers that we've lost from COVID. And somebody said on TV the other day that these numbers you see, like in the US, where we're talking about over 80,000 people, they're like 80,000 families, so families have been affected, businesses have been affected, education. So all the pillars of society have been shaken, or some of them actually grounded to a halt. So I think that when you talk about grades or levels of crisis, it actually beats the mark. It's actually one of those pandemics, epidemics, outbreaks.
I was going to say that this is the first in my generation. I'll be 50 next year, and I've never witnessed anything like this. Exactly. Now, Doctor, in what ways would you say that this has taken a toll on people mentally or emotionally?
So basically, thank you so much, sir, for that question. So basically, once there's a crisis or there's a change, the first thing that usually happens is that it's all about how the human body or the human biology, our human biology perceives that change. In this case, it's a crisis, and it usually would translate in a form of a stressor. This stressor would eventually come to me, and my first reaction would be to be alarmed. All right, so I'd actually go through a phase of an alarm, and then something's happening in my body, and it's actually my body's way of adapting to the crisis. And so things like cortisol is a stress hormone, and that just comes into my blood, and that does a lot of things. It gets my blood racing faster, it gets my heart racing faster, it gets my respiration actually increases, and this is all for me to cope with the stress, and that's usually the first thing. And then all this is helping me to do is to be able to take on the stress that has come. And I eventually move into a point where there's some form of resistance. So at this point, it's where I now need to deal with the stress. And a lot of things that determine how long this will last is how I'm able to cope in this period. Because at this time, I'm either going to kick in my fight, or I'm going to kick in running away, so the fight or flight syndrome comes in, and this is all basically biological, and I decide, okay, I want to shut my mind out of it, or do I want to face it head on and deal with it. How I deal in that resistance phase determines whether I move into the very critical phase, which is the exhaustion phase. And that's where a lot of people are going. Like the discussion we had the other day, a lot of people thought that this was going to be short term, it'll just come and it'll go. It's like a protest, but it's come to stay, and the world is actually predicting that this will be with us for a long time. And so people just move into, and then they settle in the exhaustion phase, and that's where they break down. That's where they go into more anxiety, they go into depression, and ultimately suicide becomes an option.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. And I'll still come back to the endurance of this adversary. The fact that it's looking at when it started from Wuhan.
Yes,
it's been like 6 months, 7 months.
It has been, yes. It's been about 6 months.
So we'll still talk about that. Now, I know that in times like this, people, are thrown into confusion and a sense of fear. A lot of people are waking up to some root shocks. What rude awakenings do you think people are having in this season?
I think one of the first ones, just like you said, in your generation you've never seen something like this. So first of all, it's that first. Something like this can happen. Can ever happen.
I was sorry to interrupt you. I was driving here today, and I just saw everybody wearing face masks. It's almost looking normal, seeing people wearing face masks. And I was like, I never thought Nigeria. If I had seen somebody doing this last year, I was like, I mean, so what is wrong with you?
What's going on? Because I'd seen that during the SARS outbreak.
Yes.
You see that in Asia, and you're like, wow, oh my God, this should never come here. But having to see that the whole world is now doing this, so we're being faced with a new normal. And for that's the first shock. The second thing is the community structures that we're used to have to leverage on have all been taken away from us.
I was going to come.
Yes, people can't go to their families anymore. People can't go to their churches anymore. People can't even go, for lack of a better word, people can't even go to their clubs anymore. So that all those social structures, community structures that usually help people deal through their their daily stresses have been taken away from them. So these are already impacting. And the other thing is financially, a lot of people have been thrown. We do know that money makes the world go round. And we do know that a lot of people's source of income, a lot of people's secondary sources of income have all been tampered with by virtue of the pandemic. So yes, it's a multifaceted approach.
In fact, I was thinking, and I'm like, some people's businesses have reached, how did I say now? Their shelf lives have come quicker than they ever thought. Because some businesses may just become irrelevant. Some shops are being closed for.
Yes. And imagine the models that people may have, predicted for their businesses. You also do some business coaching, and you get tell people that for every startup, give it a 3-year. But
nobody saw this coming.
Nobody saw this coming. So this was it was unprecedented, actually.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Viewers, as we are doing this, I also want you to know that this will, as I was thinking about this yesterday, I also was thinking of people dealing with bereavement, with losses, and those are all types of crises.
They are.
That people are dealing with.
Yes.
So I want us to be open-minded as we listen to this, that beyond the pandemic, life throws challenges, at us, by itself. And so this topic is to just largely prepare us for this. Well, primarily prepare us for this, but largely prepare us for life.
For tomorrow.
Prepare us for life. Now, you had said some of the things that people that the how do I put it now? What plays out, what people display in times like this. You had told me about the disruption of sleep pattern, that some of the the symptoms of crisis.
Yeah. So basically, because of
worry,
this,
anxiety,
exactly, because once a stressor comes in, my body immediately reacts to that stressor, and then that immediately translates to a biological, cycle, and then everything. So if my blood pressure, because my blood pressure is supposed to settle, if it doesn't and it keeps being up, I'm going to have a disturbed sleep pattern. If my mind is roving about my business, about my children, about my family abroad, we seem to forget a lot of people had wards and children in schools, in colleges, in countries that have been very hit. A lot of Nigerians are in China. There are a lot of people in school in China. So when this happened, my mind, there's no way I can have a restful sleep. There's no way I can think about the business I started and was hoping for some form of, stability at this point to sort of plunge.
All your projections
all my
projections
are messed up. All the decisions, the innovations I came up with are just becoming so irrelevant for the time. Imagine somebody who started a business for people to come and gather. so at this point, and then all people can't be there. So it just that's just huge. Sports.
Yeah.
Come on. So a lot of people have been affected. Think about things like Bet Ninja.
Yeah.
Things that people had held on to. These were their social activities.
People have placed bets on certain matches that never held.
Yeah,
and may never hold.
People had told me about businesses they had just made an investment on.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, that business is nowhere to be found. People have been forced to close. People have said, what, I'd rather get into the mix of the pandemic than let my business
close. People have
close.
paid for things to be imported and all of this stopped.
And now that you mentioned this, I was speaking to a friend of mine, and she mentioned weddings. People who had, even fixed their weddings. They started talking to the decor people.
Talking about that, I actually have a lady's Ashwebi with me at home, and her wedding card, and the date has passed with over a month.
My goodness. Wow. So basically that's what we're dealing with. And remember that this is also a cascade. It's something that falls into another, and then there are a lot of fallouts, a lot of pitfalls as we go ahead.
Okay, doctor, I've noticed, just looking at life generally, and I'm sure that may also be happening now. You see somebody commit suicide over an issue that somebody else laughs, over and just moves on.
Yeah.
Or somebody loses money in business, and it's like they are just a wreck.
Yeah.
And somebody's like, what next?
Yeah.
So I'm asking, are some people hardwired to just be able to deal with stress, and some people aren't?
Thank you so much, Pastor Wale, for that question. This is something that a lot of people have gone through in their minds, and I'm glad you're bringing this up. I'm not sure a lot of people will be happy to know that. So they also don't guilt trip themselves or feel really down that why am I crying in the face of the pandemic, and I know my friends who are actually thriving. The truth is that the way we respond to any stressor, the way we respond to any crisis is actually dependent on a lot of factors. And one of them is actually there's a genetic component to it. Just the way, like you said, hardwired, the way we're born, our DNA allows us to react. So the way an African man reacts to, for example, bereavement, sometimes compared to a Caucasian man, is usually somewhat a little different, and so it's you need a keen eye to identify those differences and be able to adapt. Secondly, our experiences. All right, I was talking to somebody the other day, and he said I also even just reflected on my life. The first phone I lost in college, I thought it was the end of the world, but right now if I lose a phone, I feel bad, but it's not the end of the world. I think about, okay, so have I kept some money to get another? What do I do next? It's become normal, like the new normal, that you lose things and then you replace them because it's a part of life. So basically experiences determine how well we adapt, and not just experiences of the stressor itself, but the experience of previous response to the stressor. All right, so if a stress has happened before and I acted in a maladaptive way, what I mean by that is I acted negatively to that stressor, depending on the results from that experience, I could tend to, relegate myself back to that kind of behavior as a way of dealing with the current stress, with the present reality. So basically, two things. One is, I mentioned earlier, was genetic. The second is my experiences, both of the kind of stress and also my response to the stress. The third one, which is very interesting, is also the gender. Gender is very key, whether I'm a man or I'm a woman.
You're touching on the nerve.
I know. A lot. Please, no feminist comments. Actually, but anyways, I'm actually happy to say that women actually have been shown to deal with stress much better than men do. And I'm sure as a counselor, you do know that you've experienced that when you're dealing with counseling women, they do have some form of innate ability to handle stress better, because women go through a lot during their I'm sure my favorite
just to make a comment, and I was watching a program on crime and investigation this evening, and this happy couple just had a child, and the baby was malformed. There was just some medical, and the man just took to drinking. His world just came down. But the woman just kicked into what's next. Taking care of the baby, washing the baby, bathing the baby, hospital visits. But the man was becoming an alcoholic wreck. Which you mentioned should be some of the maladaptive habits that people, coping mechanisms. So that takes me to some of my next question. What are some of the, because some people go through a crisis, like we said, bereavement, divorce, failure in school, the loss of a job, unexpectedly, and all of that. And then they begin to behave out of character. They just like this guy just became an alcoholic. So that somebody may be able to identify, am I losing it? Is there something I'm doing wrong that is detrimental? What are some of the negative coping mechanisms, strategies, that's the word, coping strategies that people adopt or adapt to in times like this to be able to cope?
Thank you so much, Pastor Wale. I think a very good one to start with, which is people don't really realize, is the first is denial. Denial is one of the worst coping strategies. You just want to imagine it's not real.
Yeah.
This is all a hoax.
This can't be me.
This can't be me, No. I lose somebody and say, no, they are the market. They're not dead.
Tell me it's not true.
Tell me it's not true, or it's not true. And so the person just immediately delves into a world that really does not exist. And so they start acting in a different environment, and that already starts affecting their mental health. The second is when people now turn to habits that tend to numb the feeling. So you talk about drugs, recreational drugs, and that's on the increase. You talk about marijuana, you talk about alcohol, and some people also tend to habits that they feel also sort of may help them forget. So for people, some people go to illicit kinds of sex or sexual activities. Masturbation goes on the increase. People also now tend to say, okay, you know what, why don't I try something new?
What goes on? Maybe already beginning to say that. What goes on in such a mind? What are they thinking? Let me go to the bottle. Abnormal sexual lifestyle or patterns. What are they thinking?
The first thing that insets, I call it a thought insertion, is hopelessness. Is the fact that it's a sense of hopelessness, a sense of I can't come out of this, a sense of pessimism, a sense of I'm trapped. There's no way out of this. This would kill me.
This is the end.
This is the end. There's no hereafter. And that's actually what just stifles any form of growth, any sense of innovativeness, any sense of newness. It just kills it at the root. And so that I think that's what people need to start guarding themselves against. Those thought insertions. People need to start thinking positively, actively. I need to say actively. If I'm passive, the first things that come to my mind will be negative thoughts.
Those are already some of the tips in building standards.
Exactly.
Okay, before we go to that, because I'm also a marriage coach and I'm passionate about marriage, I must say something about marriage, about marriages. Are marriages at risk in a crisis, especially when maybe a spouse is under a lot of stress? And like we have also identified and enumerated, families have lost maybe sources of income, they've not been able to go out. Maybe a man has been locked in the same house with his wife for for 2 months,
for a long
which he
time.
Usually wouldn't do. Flight used to be his escape.
Lagos.
He just opens the door, goes out, drives somewhere, but now he's having to deal with that. And will this have any effect on marriages? And I'm looking at things like transferred aggression. Is it possible for aggression to have a domino effect?
Yes.
For crisis rather, and stress to have a domino effect?
And Pastor, thank you again for asking this very pertinent question. One of our very fragile, I'll call it fragile structures in society now, are our marriages, because of the kind of foundation. And you do so much work to ensure that young people start marriage on the right footing, and even those who have been married also start trying to ensure that their foundation is consolidated. And so because of that fragility and that very easily breakable state of that societal structure, it's one of the pillars that takes the hardest blow, because it has all the people facing the crisis brought together in one place, confined. So like you said, people would usually have, so for example, wives, husbands would usually have other structures to leverage on, and that has been totally cut off. Some people, their form of stress, unfortunately, are their children. And all of a sudden, the children are with you 24/7. So you're dealing with their stress, and kids sometimes don't get it, especially depending on the age. If I'm dealing with a toddler or I'm dealing with an under 5, it's going to be a hot mess because they won't know when mommy is working. They just have to get what they need. So that's that extra stress. I have to be at home. There's no power. There's heat. The temperature is not just conducive. My husband, my wife, everybody is on me. The demands, sex demands from spouses, nobody's too tired anymore. So a wife who is, just tired after having a hard day, the husband now, who would usually be tired at the end of the day, is no longer tired. So demand.
So we should be expecting
a baby boom. In fact, we should be expecting in the next couple of months, by November, December, that I think that we'll start dealing with another epidemic. So yes, because
a good epidemic.
Well, I don't know how good that would be because that also puts a dent on people's finances. So we're having to do another thing that's really come up, especially in developed worlds where we're getting reports on this, is abuse. Because we do know that a lot of marriages are suffering, and so they're suffering from sexual abuse, suffering from verbal abuse, physical abuse. Now I'm with my abuser 24/7. Think of the impact. Think of the fear. How I have to live in perpetual fear of my abuser. And so these are the things that are shaking not just marriages but society entirely.
So, that means you've answered my question. That means we can transfer stress.
Yes.
You can move if the husband is the primary recipient of the stress because of his source of income, his business, his network of friends. He cannot go and watch soccer with the boys, and all of that is under a lot of pressure. Can't. He can spread to his wife, to his children. He can even kick his dog out of anger.
He can. He could actually break one of the furniture, so then incurring more cost.
Okay, so I'm with Dr. Emeka Kanebi, and we've been having an amazing time here. Remember, you can send in your questions through the chat box. You can write us on WhatsApp 090 80 million. You can send in your questions or contributions or a comment or something you need the pro to talk about. We will take that. Okay, so and then you can also 090 82222222. But you'll get those numbers in the chat box. Doctor, now somebody is saying, we had said some people are hardwired, for mental stamina to just take a licking and keep ticking. Somebody will say, well, I don't think I'm like that. When things happen, I don't sleep at night. When things happen, I scatter inside. I may be keeping a good facade,
a poker face.
Yeah, I may have my makeup and all of, but I know that inside, I'm caving in. In what ways will you? And this is the heart of what we are doing today. In what ways will you say somebody can build mental stamina, that staying power, that thing that makes the Olympic runner to get to a point where everything in his body is saying stop, everything in his body is saying quit, everything in his body is saying you can't take another, all the muscles, nerves, whatever is crying, and yet it still continues. How can people build mental stamina?
Thank you again, Pastor. This is also very, very important. I think the first thing is what you said. There's this form of introspection that people need to do. And it's so easy during this chaos to think that if I slow down, the world will end. But it's very critical that people also take some time. I know you have so much time, but now still take some time to introspect and actually define that you do have a challenge. Just like you said, I'm caving in, because it takes a lot for someone to admit that they're caving in. Because for a lot of people, they thought they could deal with stress. We're talking the other day, and some people, what is actually the shock for them is, I've dealt with tough things. Why is this crippling me?
Yeah, I remember we were saying in Nigeria, we are used to no light, we deal with that. Poor medical, we deal with that.
We deal with poverty.
NEPA takes light for 7 days, we deal with that. This is a new enemy.
This is a new enemy, and it's an unfamiliar one. So it's making a lot of people question their capabilities, making some people question their strength, what they had some form of potential to do. So the first thing is to actually, like they always say, admit that there is a challenge, admit that you have a deficiency. Once you see that, it now helps you know, where do I need to fix? For some people, it starts here, in the mind. It starts in the mind. So you ask yourself, what have I been thinking? What have I been thinking? What are my thoughts now? What are my thoughts about my business? What are my thoughts about my family? What are my thoughts about Nigeria? What are my thoughts about the future? And once you start doing that, you start finding out where you have the negative thoughts. Do I think this will kill me? Do I think this will ruin my marriage? Do I think that my children will miss a year, 2 years out of school? Do I feel that I won't be the breadwinner anymore? Once you start thinking about that, you start seeing, the negative thoughts highlight. The next step is to say, I need to replace those negative thoughts with positive thoughts. That's what a clinical psychologist would basically do. They call it cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
So basically they help you identify those negative thoughts in your head about it. Exactly, the hopelessness, the depressive thoughts, what gives you anxiety, and they say, what are your feelings about this? How does this make you feel? How does that make you feel? And you're able to talk. So you see that they do you talking first, and then they help you replace that by yourself with positive thoughts. So when you start thinking the positive thoughts, then all of a sudden there's this light bulb that comes up in your head. Oh, this could make my marriage stronger. How can I use this situation to turn it around?
Begin to see it as a half full cup, not a half empty cup.
Exactly. I start seeing this more like, they would say, a stepping stone into the new version of me, rather than this has come to stifle my progress, this has come to end me. Once you do that, the other thing that's also very critical that I always tell people about, because for some people, what has happened to them, what is hitting them so hard is that their regular schedule has been trumped, and so their life has changed. In a way of that transition period, because we will transition, because life will change. Life is not going to go back to normal. I'm sorry to tell somebody that. But so in that transition phase, you need to still have that schedule still there. So one of the ways to ensure that your mind is still productive, and you did something like this, one of the meetings in church, is ensuring that at the beginning of a day, you plan your day just like you would normally, and set goals, set targets. This is what I want to achieve. And you mentioned the other day, you can even actually put time lapses and time spans. I want to, by lunch, I want to have done this. I want to have achieved this. There's this book I've been dying to read. I need to, once you're goal oriented and you stop ticking the boxes, because after that meeting, I personally engage that in my personal life. So every single day I have a board of tasks, and then I use that. So at the end of the day, and even within your estate as well, for those of you who live in areas where you cycle, it's an amazing. If you don't have one that is mobile, you can also get those that are stationary. And doing that already just releases a bunch of hormones. You know, the other day we were talking about serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline. These are all hormones that just work on the neurotransmitters of your brain. They help calm down your blood pressure. They help you actually think better. Do you know, actually infuses innovation, because you're able to think better, dig deep into your recesses and come up with, so the best creative minds are people who have actually time to sit back and had an open, more relaxed mind, and exercise does that. Eating healthier is another key way. So this is the time, all those things you wanted to do. Some people have said, the reason I don't eat healthy is because of I don't make my own I'm in a rush to go to work. Now you can have your cereal in the morning.
Help me. Can I dig into my primary school days and find something, how I dealt with the bully in school? I say, if I took down John Bull, that school bully, I can take care of
COVID-19. Yes. Thank you again, Pastor, for this question. Again, it's very important. We have so much inside of us that we never know. Sometimes, like the question we had the other day, sometimes the things we go through, we never know that it's basically in preparation for the things to come. So there were a lot of things I as an individual, you as an individual, and a lot of people out there as individuals have gone through in life. It was not to break you. It was for you to build some form of reset, some form of reservoir for you to tap in right now. You are a hero inside of you. So you need to look back at your journey so far and say, what are those things that I've done in my past? Because you are somewhere today, and it's not because of, it's not by chance. You're here today because you fought some battles and you've won, believe it or not. And you fought some battles and lost, but you came out learning something new. Yeah. So why don't I reach back?
Won't kill you, make you stronger.
It makes you strong, and it's actually true. some people say it leaves you with a broken bone, but that's okay. You know, but you eventually you have, I'm yet to have like a basic structure. But if I look at, for example, a parent,
let the reader understand.
Let the reader understand. Yeah, but if I look at a parent
or
being deported, or having fire consume their business and them starting all over again, that is just a very amazing modeling has been found even from our children.
And some of you lost doctor's response to the last question. If you're just joining us, this is Safe Space with Pastor Wale Afelumo. We are talking about building mental stamina in a crisis. And helping us today is a bright-minded young doctor, Dr. Emeka Kanebi. So I'll take the last question again so that you can join, and then doctor will quickly answer. The question says, the pandemic is majorly new. So while reaching within for coping mechanisms, could it also be that the bombardment of advices on next level businesses can lead to mental stress? People are hearing, start this is the time to stop that, and start this and move into this and all of that. Some people are finding that stress.
Yes.
Is it possible?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. What I like to tell people is that you need to just take a break. Sometimes things happen for some people to just slow down a bit, you know, do some form of introspection, and then you now have that ability to filter, to say, okay, what is for me? Because in a myriad of all these things, there's something that is for you. There probably isn't anything for you, but if you quickly latch onto what's going on, some people have just everything is going virtual. That might not be for your business, and if you quickly try to do something that it's either very unfamiliar, you're not prepared for. Exactly, you know, you just go into uncharted waters, you might actually drown. So it's very critical that in times like this, the first thing to do is, yes, there's this everything, and you also have to limit your exposure to all this information. But another thing that's also critical is that once they're coming, you now have to create a filter. What is for me? What will work for my business? And it's okay to just take a break. Yeah.
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah.
There are people who say, well, this will soon end. Life will soon go back to normal. You guys, take it easy. Everything will just be fine. Now, it's been 2 months. looking at the lifespan of this thing is like 6-7 months now. I think that people like this may not be mentally prepared. They may have a weak constitution.
Yeah.
To be able to, they will have a too weak a constitution to go the long haul.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that a fair assumption?
It's an accurate assumption actually, because it's like going into the desert with just a can of water, because you believe that by that time you get to the next oasis.
I'll see an oasis.
Exactly, and the truth is that might not happen. So the journey we've gone on is a journey of, like we always say, it's a huge uncertainty. It's very critical that you plan as if this will be the normal, and that is
the best plan for the worst.
Exactly, because the truth is, a lot of people who thought it was going to be 2 weeks, once they said there was a 2 weeks lockdown, people went into shopping mode, and so they got all their cereals, they got all their other products, their chips and all of that, and they said, I'm good enough. 2 weeks, this should last. But imagine if that was to last for a year. Have you prepared yourself? Are you ready for that kind of duration? So it's very critical. I'm living with my spouse now. Oh, it's okay, I'll soon be back at work. What if that doesn't happen? Am I ready to be in the same environment with the people I'm living with for this period? Am I ready not to be able to go abroad, or the investment I had planned to do in December? What if at that time that investment is not available anymore? So just like Pastor, you've said, it's very important that if I'm planning that, and I hear things like this will end. It very likely wouldn't, so just like we're still trying to control epidemics which have become endemic, like tuberculosis, HIV, COVID might just be a Lassa fever, for example, originated in Nigeria actually, but we're still dealing with these with these realities. So again, think about things like even yellow fever. It never really disappeared, and that's why we're still getting vaccinations for them. So the truth is that some of these things might last. COVID might come to stay, and so it's very important that each and every one of us start tapping into our resources to say, how am I going to be there?
Which is the essence of mental stamina.
Yes.
That's why we are doing this. There would have been no need for this topic if we thought this will just end in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
What if it lasts for 6 months, for a year? Are you ready to go the long haul? Being a pastor, the Bible says that if your strength fails you in adversity, how weak is your strength?
Yeah.
Another portion of the Bible says that if you have run with foot soldiers and they weary you, what will you do when horsemen, come? I stumbled into something called the Stockdale paradox, and James Stockdale was a Vietnamese war veteran, and he was a prisoner of war for 7 years, tortured. He went through most harrowing torture, and then he survived. He came out while several people died, and he was asked, "Sir, tell us the secret of making it. How were you able to make it?" He said, "I can't tell you how I made it, but I can tell you what made the people who didn't make it not to make it." He said, "Too much optimism."
Yes.
So the people that said, "We'll be out by Christmas."
Yes.
Then Christmas came, and then Christmas went, and they were still there. By Easter, it will be over.
Yeah.
Easter came, Easter went.
Yes.
By Thanksgiving, he said many of them died of a heartbreak. But some of them said to themselves, if this thing will take 50 years, we'll hang in there.
I'm going to be on top of it.
And so that paradox basically says that you should balance optimism with realism.
Exactly.
Don't ignore where you are at. Don't ignore the challenges.
Exactly.
Yes. Maintain a sense of faith, hope. It will be fine. We'll come out of this. But right now, this is what we are dealing with.
Exactly.
We can't run away from
I actually
that.
like you. I like that you didn't say balance optimism with pessimism, because that would be that's counterproductive. Yeah. But if you're balancing optimism with realism or reality, that is what it should be.
Yeah.
That this is where I am. How do I build my capacity to be relevant? How do I build my capacity to survive? How do I build my capacity to have some stamina even for tomorrow?
And I think the quicker that people can make that switch, that is what determines their level of mental stamina. The quicker that okay, business failed. Oh, the money was lost in investment. What's next? We can't keep crying.
Yes.
What do we do next?
Yes.
Okay, what if the money or the investment, we hope they pay us, we are going to court, we hope we get what we lost, but what if we don't?
Exactly. What if we don't?
What if we don't? So just make that switch. you know, and it will play out in different areas, of life. Fantastic. I can still ask you a question. Well, this looks a bit medical, but then let's see how it goes. It says, how is this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, any different from the flu era? How was the world able to overcome in that era, in the flu era?
I think this is a
little of history and
exactly. This is actually very interesting. The first thing was that there were different times, you know. So the pandemic then was dealing with fewer people. The world was not so much of a global village.
Yeah.
When we're talking in the 1912s, people were not moving around the way we're doing right now. So talking about disseminate it, because right now, just by the click of a pandemic, we'll do all we can, but we'll lose lives. Some people will die, and then the stronger breed will emerge. So out of exactly, so you actually had so you hear these veterans talk about how they came out of the Civil War. They came out of that because what had happened was that some form of natural selection, you know. So and that was the approach that WHO and other bodies were trying to use. Like, let everything just remain normal. Those who will get it and recover because it's happening. Those who get it and recover will just recover and come back. And those who won't pass on and die off. So maybe this is the world's way of having the few select, you know, like you say, culpable or rather viable breeds. The people that will come out of this are, you know, the crop or the creme de la creme. Yes, you know, the people know, you know, the good breed and all of that. But again, that's not the way we want to go, because we do know that every life is sacred. We do know that the impact of that will actually be massive, and the fallout of that will be great and will be grievous. So basically, we're now using other strategies now to do that.
We're really running out of time. Doctor, what will you say will be the likely pitfalls or fallouts of not taking these things you've said today seriously, building mental stamina? We may have alluded to them in some, but then can we identify if I don't take this seriously and I'm like, you know, or maybe there's even a young person now, daddy's still paying house rent, paying school fees, paying everything for you, and you are not taking these things seriously. What are the likely pitfalls, the dangers of not being a mentally strong, virile person?
Remember where we started? I did say earlier that a lot of things you've gone through in the past was not for your past, was actually for your present and then your future. One of the biggest disservice you do for yourself is to not build this time, because you will need what happens in this season, not just for individuals, organizations, for even countries. They will need what they're able to set up during this time for the future, and that will be critical for the world as we know it, and the world as we will know it. What we're able to do, the investments we make,
maybe it will even make our children be a more resilient generation.
Exactly.
Growing up, we never went through. We played on the streets, swam in the sea, we did all kinds of things.
And you do know our parents who went through the Civil War, they think differently. They think differently. You know, they've seen lack, they've seen people being killed, they've seen society crumble. So when there's a little protest, we shake, but they are like, you were not there in the 60s, you know, you were not there before. So basically, that is what I like. The word you use is resilience, and that just simply means my ability to spring back. So I'm going to be crushed, I'm going to be, you know, broken, I'm going to be suppressed, but how am I going to, and if I'm able to develop that elasticity, that's like, you know, like you said, the staying power, the hanging it there, in there, the keeping it together, that is what will see me through, because something, just like we saw COVID, something is going to come. Maybe not in our generation, but again, remember that there's a generation we are budding. There's a budding generation. There's something coming. Your children, my children, these are people who will live to see, and how, like I say, the modeling, they will remember, they will cast their mind back and say, in 2020, how did my parents handle this? How did Nigeria handle this? How did my church, how did my local community handle this? You know, and then they will say, how did the world, you know,
we
handle
have to
this?
Succeed at this.
We must succeed at this. Our future depends on it. You know, the world depends on it. The world depends on you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. As we begin to round up.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm muzzling it up. I am digging in my heels.
Yeah.
I'm believing.
Yeah.
I am fighting.
Yeah.
You know, 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I'm getting to the end of my limits. You know, I'm doing my best effort, but I'm becoming helpless. At what point do I cry out for help? At what point do I realize that I need help?
Yes, I think, thank you so much again, Pastor, for asking that question. One thing that you've said, and a lot of people tend to just push it under the carpet, you know, is that sometimes they exaggerate their coping abilities. They think that oh, I have it all together, especially from past experience. I can deal with this. But it's very critical for you to know. And once, like the signs we talked about, once you see yourself slipping into old behaviors, maladaptive things you had succeeded in, things you had overcome, things that you had battles you had won before, and you're just nicely slipping back into those habits, into those bad eating habits, bad exercise habits, bad sexual habits. That's the point you know that I need help. And it's very critical. That's one of the very, very essential points in your life that you come to and say, okay, and the next thing is, where do I get this help from? Like I was discussing with you, the first thing to do is to look within you. I always say that the first aid is you. So we talked about that already, going back to your recesses to tap in there and say, where can I draw strength from? Because it's things that you've invested in, and you know, you've talked a lot about it's like a sponge. It depends on how much water you've been able to hold, and you can tap into that. And like every other person, never feel guilty about it. You get to your wit's end, like Pastor said. You get to a point where you know you've exhausted all your resources. You always now need to look at within you, just immediate environment. Who can be a source of help? Who can be a source of social support? It could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a parent, it could actually even be a child. It could be your child. Your child could be your source of strength that keeps you through another point. It could be a podcast, it could be a message, it could be a book. These are external resources that could help you, and then you can get some help nuggets that could help you through another phase. And sometimes these are just for the immediate phase, and once you scale through that, you're able to keep running.
How do we bridge the social gap? Now we can't come close.
Yes.
Just by way of advice.
Yes.
Okay? It goes without this. I think it's a no-brainer.
I think we should still, we should still talk about it. You know, text somebody you haven't texted in a while. You know what they're saying right now is that the world has gone into selfish mood. It's a pandemic. I need to hoard. I need to stop doing. I need to stop reaching. And that's where I don't want to go in a spiritual tune, but that's where the world, or the world wants to take us to now be more selfish. But it's actually been shown that one of the ways to improve your mental state is actually at this time doing things for other people. You know, invest in other people's lives. Wash clothes for somebody at this time, cook food for somebody at this time, take it to their home, take care of somebody's child who needs support. You know, there are people who still go to work, there are people who need someone to stay there for them. Be there for somebody at this time. You'll be surprised, just as you're giving strength to somebody else, it gives you an idea. It gives you an idea that I'm not useless. I have something to give. So it keeps your relevance up. It makes you say, I still have something to offer. And your sense of worth, your sense of relevance increases, and your value just remains at the top notch. And that actually builds your mental stamina. I just thought to chip that in. So do something for somebody, reach out to somebody. Like they say, social distancing doesn't mean social isolation. Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't mean social isolation.
Yes.
And you know, it works like magic. You can imagine you wake up one morning feeling so depressed, unloved, you know, just feeling like the world is against you. You feel like pulling the sheets over your head. But then suddenly you pick your phone and go through your contact and just put a message, hello, I'm thinking of you, I'm praying for you, God bless you, and send it to like 50 people. It will shock you the responses you will get.
Amazing. I'm sure you've been getting responses from that, because I know you do that, a lot of it. And people have actually had a lot of, you know, testimonies about people just thinking about them and sending them something. And the impact that has.
I'm even talking about the impact on you, because at first you thought nobody loves you, is thinking about you. Then you begin to get responses. Oh, thanks for thinking. Oh, I was thinking about you. I'm praying for you.
Exactly.
You know, like that. And somebody needs to kickstart that social satisfaction. You know, that we all need from one another. You know?
I agree with you. So like I said, a lot of our social structures have been collapsed, but thank God for another thing, talking about the last question we answered, what is different now and how can we make things different, is that we have that reach to get to people and still engage with people by whatever means it is.
Okay, doctor, is there like where people can get professional help?
Yes, of course. I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't like this, but I think it's very essential. Yes, we've talked about all the social support systems that are around you. Your pastors are there. Your cell group leaders are there. But again, we do have professional counselors, like you said. You're a certified coach, certified counselor. There are people who are certified to deal with issues and stresses like this. We'll actually put those contacts on the chat box so you can have access to that. So basically, these are mental community-based organizations. They help support people during the times of stress. If you're going through some of abuse, you're a woman, you live in a household where you're being abused, just having that support, that helpline that you can actually call and get that support. And some of these will be going on. You'll be going on your screen right away, and then
there's a number, if it's not there yet. It's for Mental Health Foundation Nigeria.
Exactly, yes.
080-3323-6814. 080-3323-6814. And you also have their email address, their info@mentalhealthnigeria.org. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just kit yourself up for the days to come. So much depends on your mental ability and stamina to be able to deal with life.
Exactly.
Life throws challenges at us. Like Doctor said earlier, and like I know in the past how many days now I've heard of people who passed on to the great beyond, not COVID related. So life is still happening. So people are dealing with bereavement, and I hope that someday to be able to talk about that on Safe Space with Pastor Wale Afelumo. Talk about bereavement, divorce, things that challenge, that really rock people to their foundation. Be able to deal with that. Doctor, I must thank you.
Oh, Pastor, thank you
very
more
much for taking out the time to be here.
Thank you for having me
today. Would you want to say any closing comments? We like 5 minutes running.
I'd just like to say to everybody who is listening to us, and obviously this will be there for a long time, forever, obviously with data and all and what's happening. But what we do today is actually very, very important for tomorrow. So at the back of your mind, invest in today. Hold on. Know that it's not in vain, and then you'll come out of this, a better, much better version of you. And if anything happens, you get broken along the way, remember, you heal stronger, and that your experience would actually, like you talked about the other day, that even just, chronicling your own experiences can be of amazing benefits to other people. You will change your world.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. And I also would like to say to some of you, sometimes just live one day at a time. I'll just wake up the next day, and wake up the next day, and wake up the next day, and you will make it. I want to thank you very much for being a part of Safe Space with Pastor Wale Afelumo, the maiden edition. Thank you for liking my Facebook page, and you should still do that. Tell your friends to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that more people can see this. The video will always be there to see. And for those of you who couldn't see it on Facebook, will try to migrate this experience there, and you can always see. And I'll beg you to please share with your friends. Till I come again, by the grace of God, with another guest. This is Pastor Wale Afelumo saying, stay safe and keeping on. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can stand up.